Bingo. Yeah. All right. Okay, so I'm Bulavinaka and Tala for everyone. My name is Catherine Mara, and I work with Moses and Christina here at the Division of Sustainable Tourism at SPTO. So today I'll be talking about the SPTO Toolkit as a way of recovery for tourism SMEs. I'm sorry, Craig, and before I continue with my presentation, is it okay if I could just off my screen for better connection?
You want to, sorry?
Just to switch off my
video?
My video, sorry.
Yeah, of course. You can turn your video off. It's fine. Yeah, go ahead.
All right. Yeah, so just to give a brief background on the SPTO SME Recovery Toolkit. So it was created in response to the COVID-19 pandemic and the economic impacts it brought. It was mostly targeted to support the recovery of tourism SMEs within the Pacific. And not only to ultimately respond to the economic impacts of COVID, but also the toolkit kind of serves as a way for tourism businesses to integrate the concept of sustainability within their tourism operations. So the toolkit was developed through a desktop research as well as online consultations with the regional working group, which consisted of 5 countries, Fiji, Kiribati, Nauru, Tonga, and Tuvalu. And it was developed within an year, beginning at the end of 2020, and the toolkit was launched in October last year. The toolkit was developed through a partnership with SPTO and Travel Foundation, as well as the funding support of the US Embassy through the Economic Recovery Grant. And the toolkit can be accessed from the SPTO website under the Sustainability tab. So the toolkit comprises of 7 chapters. It takes you through the whole product development process, from identifying the right target market to pricing, teaching you pricing strategies, to creating the right product for your right markets, and how to get to the right targeted market. So the recovery toolkit is for tourism SMEs, and it provides insights on how to identify emerging markets, building your product sustainably around them. Within the toolkit, all the chapters have different tools within them that helps users in the how to use the toolkit themselves, and these tools are for knowledge boosters, as well as a list and templates are within the our tools themselves, and there's some practical case studies to help users understand the concept of each chapter. So moving on to chapter 1. So this is a comprehensive introduction to tourism product development. It helps users identify excuse me. It helps users identify which type of market trends are emerging, especially with the COVID-19 pandemic. Certainly the tourism market has changed, and that's the importance of chapter 1, helping tourism SMEs identify which type of market trend to respond to. And once they're able to identify the right trends, they would be able, the toolkit also would be able to support them in responding to them. And excuse me, on the right there, these are those are some pages of what's within chapter 1, and very interesting information is there, and I would actually urge tourism SMEs to go through them. They have some important information in them. And on the left there, those are some points on what the chapter 1 addresses in terms of market trends, responding to small groups, outdoor activities, the concept of sustainability, both environmental and social and cultural, even coming right down to gastronomy, nature, adventure, and local markets. So that's on chapter 1 on identifying market trends. And chapter 2 of identifying your evolving market trends Chapter 2 helps you create the product that would best suit the evolving trends. And it gives you a lot of information on that, understanding what value is, designing your products, and most importantly, embedding sustainability within your product. And so on the right there are some pages from chapter 2, which also has some very interesting points. Those are some of the tools that are included under chapter 2 for the products for accommodation as well as experiences. And the chapter 2 even provides users with a checklist for sustainability. And by the end of the chapter, users would be able to create a product that responds to their right market and also be able to respond sustainably. So moving on to chapter 3, this is on health, safety, and security, which is very important, especially in the wake of COVID-19 pandemic. Health and safety is very important, especially for tourism operations. So this chapter is on that, and it provides you some tips for health, safety, and security for tourism SMEs, as well as the importance of both international and local legislations and protocols that are important for tourism SMEs to understand. And those are some of the pages and some of the things you find within this chapter of health and safety. And those are some of the key points that this chapter touches on: international and local legislations on health and safety, as well as COVID-19 protocols, human rights, risk assessments, and health and safety practices. And even provide some key studies around the region that held really well carried out health and safety goals in the midst of the pandemic. So that was on the health and safety. Chapter 4 is on pricing, which is very important. And so this is a very practical chapter that sets out the principles of pricing, and it even provides examples and templates that users can use so that SMEs can follow along and calculate their own costs and prices. The chapter concludes with advice on how to safeguard against the challenges of the pandemic, and with a range of strategies and pricing policies. On the right there, those are some examples of the templates that are provided within this chapter, pricing templates, and they go step by step in calculating your various costs of your hotel, from smallest things like the electricity and right till the end on what your price should include, not only the cost of your hotel, but taking into account other methods of sales and marketing, which is also integrated into the pricing. So those are very important points on the right there, which is included in this chapter, which includes calculating the cost, determining your break-even points, and then from those break-even points, you put a profit margin and a markup, which comes up to your final price. And this is all detailed within this chapter of pricing. And chapter 5 is on access to markets and getting ready. So this chapter is also quite important. It sets out the various routes that a tourism SME can use to access their right tourist market. They will familiarize themselves with many different intermediaries, and they may choose to work as well with the pros and cons. So this chapter kind of gives you ways you can access the right market and gives you the pros and cons of each of those access. And it's up to the tourism SMEs, with the information they have, which best way to access their identified market. And on the right there, there's some of the content within this chapter. That's a very good diagram on the right there. It gives you where the tourist market is and gives you different ways of how you can access them. All of this is well detailed in the toolkit. And some of the important topics that are covered within this chapter are international tour operators, inbound operators, direct bookings, online travel agents, and even search engines. So these are all tips. They all provide tips on how to be able to access the tourism market, even both offline and online. Moving on to chapter 6, which is customer service and communication. This chapter sets out the importance of every customer interaction throughout the entire journey. So there is a focus on delivering quality consistently throughout the pandemic and beyond. Again, lots of really good and practical advice that can be implemented. And on the right there, those are some content from this chapter 6. And on the left there, those are some points that the chapter gives for tourism SMEs. So it provides guidance on bookings and inquiries, providing a warm welcome to transport, activities, guiding practices, building your reputation, and even delivering quality during the pandemic. So that's on customer service. And lastly, this is on chapter 7. This is on online sales and marketing, which is quite very important. The pandemic has given rise to a lot of online activities, and sales and marketing has integrated a concept of virtual relationships. So this chapter aims to build the knowledge and know-how when it comes to optimizing each of the booking platforms. So this chapter introduces tourism SMEs through different ways to be able to get bookings and to be able to access their guests via online. And this chapter also introduces to tourism SMEs the different platforms that are currently popular and we can take advantage of. So those are the some content from this chapter 7, and as well as some important points from this chapter. And in the Pacific, online knowledge is not really that much. So this is a very important chapter where tourism SMEs can build on their online and social media knowledge. Chapter touches on online sales, to search engines, to customer reviews, to online travel agents, social media websites, your branding, creating a marketing pack, to search engine optimization, and harnessing the power of reviews. So those are very important stuff in chapter 7, and I think that concludes the whole toolkit. And the toolkit is, I'd like to conclude by saying that the toolkit is not only beneficial for existing tourism SMEs, but also for those who are planning to start a tourism business. So it's able to benefit tourism SMEs who are at any stage of development. And the toolkit is available at the SPTO website under the sustainability tab. And just for next steps with this toolkit, we're currently developing an explainer video, which will provide more of a visual instruction. You'll have animated characters. I know some people don't really like to go through a lot of reading, don't really like to read. So that's why we're developing a video to be able to make the toolkit more exciting and be engaging with. And so the video will be freely accessible to everyone, and it will be on the SPTO YouTube page as well as the website. Yeah, so I think that's about it. But sorry, Craig, before I just close, I just wanted to show you all where the toolkit is on the website to be able to easily, right. So if you go to the SPTO website, up here, if you go to the SPTO website, Pacific Tourism Organization, I'll send the link on the chat to everyone. So if you go to the SPTO website, under the sustainability tab, you have publications. And if you click on publications, it gives you all the whole toolkit, and not as one document, but as 7 documents representing the 7 different chapters. Yeah. So that's it from me, Craig. Thank you very much, and happy to answer any questions from anyone. Vinaka.
Wala Vinaka, excellent. Thank you, Catherine. That was that, and I as usual, SPTO's presentations are very visually stimulating. That was, and they look like very useful tools. But I'm not a tourism operator, so I'll open up the questions to the floor. If we could have some questions from the floor. I can't see anyone other than Rupeni at the moment. So Ivan, can you identify any questions?
Thank you, guys. I'm sure you've heard about the SPTO Toolkits, for those of you who are new to the Toolkits. So do you have any questions for Catherine, just about mine? It's very quiet here, Greg, so I think perhaps, okay.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead.
All pretty self-explanatory.
Well, I have a question here.
Okay, good.
Thank you, Catherine, for my question is started with University. During this presentation, said that these toolkits were produced last year, October 2021, as a response to the situation. And during that time, I see tourism shifting perspective from selling tourism to overseas people. And right now, as you can see, CAS selling into the local as a way to help the industry. So I'm just wondering if the borders keep losing from some alternative industries to help that sector. Thank you. I think that's a good question for STA colleagues. Robert, perhaps?
Yeah. No, thank you. Yeah, thank you for the question. In terms of, as you mentioned, in terms of the focus on the domestic and local market at the moment, there's at the moment, unfortunately, that's the only market available to the local, hoteliers and operators. Unfortunately, our local domestic market, in comparison to other countries in the region, isn't as big as what other countries are able to depend on. So it's even the focus on the domestic market. It's still quite a struggle for all the local hotels. And generally, the case is it's only really on the long weekends where these hotels and resorts will see the slight increase in business, but then generally they're not able to make any sort of profit. It's really just to cover their operational expenses and keep people employed. But as you mentioned, alternatives. The focus really is on hopefully getting the borders open as soon as possible. There's only so many hotels and so many times that the locals will go and visit a hotel before eventually you're just repeating and going again and again. So but there is a push to drive through events, hosting events out in different locations, having events in Savai'i, planned around those long weekends where we can try and get people across. So last year there was a few events such as the Palolo Festival, which was held in Savai'i, and so really just trying to think of creating events which gives another reason for people to travel, and in addition provide some sort of income to the hotels and resorts in the rural areas. But, yeah. Thank you.
You catch Greg?
Yes, I did. I got that. Yeah, it's a cold hard fact that the borders remain closed. We're not going to be getting any tourists coming into Samoa, and we have to rely on local tourism. And I do know that a lot of operators have tried to adjust to the change in the market, but as it drags on, it is more and more difficult everywhere. I'm just looking to see if there's any comments from online. No. And I can see Christina has her hand raised. Christina, I'll give you the floor. You need to unmute your mic, so.
Okay, thank you very much. I think I'm really enjoying the discussion today, and you people have talked a lot about, you know, a lot of great things that we need to be thinking about as.
You're muted again.
Policy make value the opportunity from SPREP to you know, have this discussion, and like to go back to that we've presented really is just focusing on the recovery side of things, but from the regional level and also hopefully across you know, the region, we can see the value here of resetting and, you know, thinking about the future and how we you know, move to reopening. And so that's why the EIA discussion is very timely, and I value this, you know, exchange that I can see today and also yesterday. So if, you know, you are facing challenges at the national level there in Samoa, we'd very much like to hear any updates or feedback, you know, through SPREP or through SPTO, so we can also learn about, you know, what the challenges are in terms of tourism and UIAs or tourism and environmental sustainability in general. One of the questions that I had posed earlier to Rufeni was probably around, you know, the kind of support that is required or specific when we are transition to renewable energy. If there's we have more insights, we probably could do a sub-regional or a regional proposal to the donors if that's needed. I know it's going to be a long way away to be able to realize that. It's important to be, you know, thinking about the activity as a group. And the last point I wanted to mention too was
Sorry, Christina, we can't hear you.
Yeah, sorry, Christina, your last point was completely muted and it was a little bit wobbly for some of those areas.
So I hope you heard all of that.
I'm still here. Sorry, you were mentioning about the value of the workshop and giving people the opportunity to provide feedback to SPTO and SPREP about ventures and issues that they're having in Samoa particularly. But we missed that very crucial last bit where you said the one of the points you wanted to focus. It just this audio dropped out completely. It could be because you've got multiple mics running in the room.
Sorry, Greg, can you hear me now?
That's much clearer. Again. All right. Your microphone keeps going to mute.
Yeah, because we're connecting from the other laptop. Sorry, we don't have the sophisticated PCC facilities here.
Okay.
Anyway, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, just one last point around the standards. I'm not too sure if Samoa Tourism Authority had presented on the accommodation standards that they do administer, you know, regularly. And I wanted to ask if the Puma rep that is part of the Samoa Accommodation Standards Committee, if they do have the opportunity to check up on the EIA conditions when they are actually carrying out the inspections. And I also wanted to highlight, for the benefit of those of us who are not fully aware of, government's contribution to supporting sustainability in the tourism sector in Samoa. Unlike other countries, I think Samoa is probably a good case study where you see the government through the national tourism organizations contributing, financially to the monitoring process, because they do have a standards accommodation committee. And so you don't find that in other countries or other destinations in the Pacific. And this could be a case study that we could share with others, where SDA funds the participation of the other government agency representatives from MNRE, from the private sector, through the associations, from EPC. And so from PUMAE, that's MNRE from health, and I think it shows value in the commitment of tourism to ensuring that what we are doing and, the way we are developing products and experiences over time, we are supporting collective efforts towards sustainability. And so that's very important, because you come to Fiji, it's such a big country. It's our biggest tourism destination, but that doesn't exist at all. There is no cost sharing between ministries. And I think that's one point that, we can sort of like reflect on and celebrate as part of Samoa's contribution to maintaining environmental integrity in the development of tourism.
Thank you, Christina. Did the room all get that? Ivan?
No, I think we got some of it.
Okay, so I'll try and quickly summarize. Forgive me, Christina, if I don't reflect it as eloquently as you did. So Christina was praising Samoa, the government direct funding for the STA, and then the support for the standards for accommodation in Samoa. And she was asking about whether or not Samoa could be a very good case study for how this is done in the Pacific, because it's not really done anywhere else, even in Fiji, where the government is funding this type of standards for accommodation in tourism, and whether or not STA would be able to help with this case study for how other, because when they do their monitoring, and then if they could be going out, and when they do their monitoring of the accommodation, if they are also checking the EIA approval conditions or the environmental license conditions for those operators at the same time.
Thank you, Greg. Much clearer. I hope everyone got that. Yeah, I think everybody is clear now on that point.
Okay, give me a thumbs up or a wavy hand or something, Christina, if I got that right, or if I missed anything out. Okay, thank you. Good to know my old ears still work, and not just for holding my glasses on my face. Okay, are there any questions from the floor in regards to the toolkit or Christina's just her comments just then? A show of hands. It's a bit hard. You're all quite small. I'm going to unspotlight myself and try and have a look at you guys.
No comments?
No comments? Anything? Robert? Rob?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I think just a comment picking up of the point raised by Tina there regarding the accommodation standards committee.
Mm-hmm.
In particular regarding the role of Puma within the committee. I think a lot of the focus of the Puma representative when it comes to the accommodation standards inspections is around the areas around wastewater and those areas. But I think Tina raised an important points, and going forward it could be a good way also to monitor the EIA approval conditions which are in place. And it's something that definitely we can discuss with Puma moving forward. In addition to, you know, looking at the wastewater conditions and, you know, the septic tanks side of things. We could also, in addition, look at what the approval conditions were of the EIAs and whether these operators are in compliance with those conditions. Yeah, just to add on to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Yeah, that sounds great. Did you get that, Christina? We also have a question coming in from Della at Puma. I'll just read it out for everybody. It says, Ari, the question on Puma's side, most of the tourism developments submitted don't have EIAs, but we do monitor and inspect conditions issued by the agency's development consent. I'm guessing that's what DCA stands for. For the developments with EIAs, we monitor our development consent conditions in addition to the environmental monitoring plans that are submitted. So that's EMP for those of you who don't know what EMP means. That's environmental management plan. So that's from Della. Thank you, Della. So it's not really a question. It's more about her explaining more about what Puma do.
Yes. And we have one more comment here from Ofera.
Okay.
Thank you, Ivan, and thank you to the presenters from SPTO. I just wanted to also make a comment and a assistance for Puma STA. They have TDA management plans, well, and those are tourism development areas. Those are their planning tools that are in place for Samoa tourism, and I'm not sure if Puma has any copies of these documents. Do you have it, Puma team? No. Okay, it would be very helpful that that those documents be part of your development consent application assessments as well. To be aware of Samoa tourism. So planning guidelines in place because they also have to.
Thank you. Raised by Ofera. You guys that, Greg?
No, I was struggling to hear that. I'm sorry. It's the room audio is not great.
So are we moving on, Greg? I think we have no further questions from the room here.
No, I don't. Well, we do have an addition to Della's statement that she made. She was saying that's the referral to the developments with no EIA. These are usually the small beach valet developments. Hence, this is why there's no requesting for an EIA. Yeah, so she's just answering your question, Tina. Yeah, the other thing I just wanted to check with SPTO, according to the program, that we're going to be presenting on some ecotourism initiatives as well, or examples of ecotourism within the region. Sorry to put you on the spot, just checking, have you got a presentation for that?
Hi, Greg. Sorry.
Hi. Hello? I think that,
Hi, Greg.
no?
Sorry, there's no presentation. We haven't prepared one. Did you want to present on that one?
Okay. STA, do you have a presentation about local case studies or developments?
No, Greg.
Nope. Okay. All right. Okay. Let me just have a look at the program. So, sorry, I thought we had another presentation, but that one's not. So we don't have anything on conservation and ecotourism initiatives. Recent developments of EIA examples in Samoa. I do know that a few years ago, the STA did help support some upgrades to tourism tracks in Savaii to get to the waterfalls. That was actually a really good example of the use of EIA and using it to to actually reduce impacts, because it created a much better path to the waterfalls. It was safer, it gave better accessibility, so people even in wheelchairs can get there now from the car park. And it also made it much easier to keep the area clean, because it's a properly well-maintained path, so less likelihood of people disposing of their rubbish. I have found from when I used to do my hikes around Samoa that if you've got very narrow paths with lots of overgrown vegetation, it's really inviting for people just to leave their water bottle. So the number of empty water bottles I used to collect on my walks up and down Mount Vaya, yeah, I usually filled a backpack every time going up and down. So it was a good initiative by STA when they helped to open up some of the paths and walking trails around Savaii to make them more accessible, because it has a multitude of benefits. That's just one of my observations for sort of improving ecotourism and things that have been done in Samoa that I've noted. Given that we don't have an actual session presentation, I'd like to go back to some of the questions that we didn't quite get to. We've got a question, sorry, that's just come through. It says, STA, will it be possible for you to share the policies guideline mentioned by AFERA for our reference? This is from SPTO, or a link to those documents. So that, I guess, Robert, that's a question to you. No, that's actually come from Puma. That's from Della. So if you could share those documents with Puma after the meeting. Let me just have a look back and see if we didn't close out on any of the questions. Catherine has also shared the link for those toolkits in the chat. So for those of you who are logged in and monitoring the Zoom connection, you can copy that link out, but I've sent that link through to Ivan as well. So he will circulate that to the mailing list. So as long as you've provided us with an email contact during your registration or during your daily sign-in, we can supply you with all the documents and slides and any of the supporting information that's accompanying these presentations. You'll get copies of those and access to that at the end of this workshop. Okay, so there was a couple of questions that came in from SPTO during earlier sessions. Don't know if you guys want to re-ask those questions, or if you want me to ask them for you on your behalf.
Hi, Greg. Yes.
Yeah. Please, Christina. Okay, SPTO still seem to be having some audio issues.
Yeah. Can you hear me now or no? Yeah. We can talk.
Yes, we can hear you.
So I was just wanting to understand from the MNRE team, especially the renewable energy team. Sorry, I don't understand how the targets are set, but would you know if the tourism sector has specific contribution towards the target?
Did the room hear that?
Sorry, no, we didn't hear that.
Okay, so I believe the question was, and this is going back to the renewables target about the 100% renewables for Samoa by 2030. And Tina was asking, does Samoa have a specific target for the tourism sector that this is the tourism sector is working towards in the meantime towards the NDCs?
If I may
Go ahead, please.
intervene, we're not quite sure about that, but we can ask some renewable energy colleagues and we can provide that confirmation by tomorrow.
I think if I could just add, Tina, thank you for the question. I think in terms of a tourism specific target in the NDC, so at the NDC, tourism has been it's been classified under the energy sector. And under that, we also have electricity, land transport, maritime transport, and tourism. And so the target for the energy sector, as I mentioned, is emissions in the energy sector by 30% in 2030. So that's the target for the particular sector, which includes tourism in there.
Okay. Thank you, Rob. We got a thumbs up from Tina, so she heard that. We did have some breakout tasks that were set by Susanna earlier in the waste section. I'm just trying to see what her slides are. I can't see what her slides are anymore. From memory, they were basically, she wanted to know if we could break into two groups, maybe split rather than, which I can see is Puma sitting on one right side of the room. We've got MNRE and STA on the other. If we could maybe mix up a little bit and think about, if you could think about actual waste management, practicable management measures that could be done for a particular hotel. So we come up with a scenario for a hotel. We think about all the different waste streams that are going to be coming in, and then how would we deal with those waste streams for that venture? So for that hotel, how would you deal with waste? So what type of waste first would we think about? Or we could just go around the room. What type of waste do you think would be applicable to a tourism resort? Say I'm not going to pick on any particular resort, so I'm just going to put up a hypothetical here. Tourism resort on the coast has a combination of overwater falez and land-based falez, has also a restaurant and a bar. They run weekly entertainment with a disco held on weekends as well. They have inside and external guests coming in using their beaches, and they have multiple swimming pools. So what sort of waste impacts do you think that development would be having? And how might we work on ways to mitigate those? No waste?
That any ideas for waste that are produced by
Okay, what sort of waste streams would be typical of a hotel? If we have food, does everybody eat everything on their plate? Some ones are pretty good at that, but would there be any food waste from the kitchen? There's going to be organics. Even if they've got a garden, there's going to be regular cuttings that they have to deal with. There's laundry, so any of the products they use there, empty packaging from that. Complementary amenities that they put into the rooms, breakages, that's waste as well. Spent batteries, broken globes. And then of course there's your drinks containers if you're running a bar. And then all of the disposable napkins and everything else that goes on with it. And if you have a tanai, even if you're using banana palm and coconut woven baskets, you've still got that organic waste as well. So there's a couple of examples that just spring to mind. Any others that people can think of? If you're going to a resort, what sort of stuff do you see laying around on the ground or you see filling up in the bins?
Greg, I think the big one is, the single-use plastic water bottles. Yeah. As SPTO mentioned earlier today. Especially when you're having, functions such as weddings and which generate a lot of that PETs.
So with that in mind, what sorts of steps could we be encouraging within resorts? I have seen a few And we did have with the Pacific Games, there were a number of installments of water cooler and filtration units stationed around different locations. There are a couple of resorts that actually have those, and I've seen them at the bigger resorts more frequently in Fiji as well. Is that something that people think would work if we encourage people like we have here at SPTO on campus? We did away with the water cooler towers that came in with the bottles every week. We would go through something like 20 of those big bottles a week, and we ended up installing a water filtration unit in various locations around the campus. So that's reduced our reliance on having to have those even reusable water cooler towers. Is that something that could work in resorts, you think? That people just refill from their own water bottles, or bringing out just jugs of cold water to clientele?
Yes.
Is there like an initiative, Rob, within the industry? Is that promoted to try and reduce plastic bottles use in the hotels?
Thanks, Greg. Yes, it is encouraged, and on that point, there are a few, as you mentioned, who already have that in place. Just off the top of my head, Salitonga is a good example, where they've put in numerous water stations around the hotel, and encouraged people to bring their own reusable water bottles to fill up. I think it's a good commitment from the hotel, given that they could also make a lot of profit from selling water bottles, but they've decided to commit to providing those water stations. Obviously, they're missing out on that extra income from selling the water bottle, the plastic water bottles, but that's a good example of that it does work, and moving towards that sustainable tourism side. Yeah.
Christina from SPTO has just also mentioned Amoa. Yeah, that's another one I know of as well, that they just hand out water and they'll refill your bottles, and they'll even top you up with ice as well from when you stay there. So they're really good at that. I think, yeah, they might be missing out on some of the revenue from plastic water bottles, but there's also a cost when you buy that, especially if you're buying imported water. Hopefully hotels are not buying imported bottled water anymore. But yeah, there's still a cost when they buy those water bottles, and then they've got that small markup that they make when they sell them. I think it's a goodwill thing as well. Tourists feel good about a hotel where they know they can just get water, they don't have to pay for it, so makes them feel better, and they're probably more likely to put money over the bar for something else as well. Are there any rebates still in operation, any incentives from being offered by the government for commercial enterprises to install these water filtration cooler units before we go on and think about other waste management?
Not that I'm aware of, Greg. No, there aren't.
Okay. Yeah, so yeah, plastic water bottles. Okay, so we do have another speaker. So we can move to that in a moment. But before we do, hand the floor over to Afera from the World Bank consultancy for Pacific Learning Partnership. Are there any other thoughts from the floor about waste management mitigation? I mean, part of what we're here to do, and Jope is going to talk about environmental management plans tomorrow, is to start thinking about better ways for EIAs to work. And one of the better outcomes for EIAs is to have really good environmental management plans, to have effective ones, as we had highlighted earlier today. So we've got a big brains trust in the room. So if you've got some thoughts about ways to manage waste, please share your ideas, or even if you go away and think about them and maybe come back tomorrow. So just give you a few more minutes for anyone to contribute before we move to the next session, because I find these conversations are actually really interesting. I'm taking lots of notes from the stuff you guys are talking about. No. Rob, I don't know if you were here for Susanna's presentation when she was presenting on waste, and she talked about biogas and biogas reactors. Do you know if there's anything like that that's been looked at within Samoa for any of the hoteliers?
Thanks, Greg. No, there aren't any that I'm aware of on that front in terms of biogas hotels. Okay.
Yeah, she did mention in the side conversation that she was having with SPTO here in the chat that there are some places in Fiji that were implementing this type of system. So I'm guessing it's for larger resorts because you do need to have both animal, or I guess human waste would suffice, as well as your biomass, so your organic mass, which you then, the digester goes through and converts it into gas, which then you can use within your kitchens for cooking off of. But yeah.
Just to add on one point on that, I think about 3 or 4 years ago, there was a pilot program, I think through MNRE, which, piloted a few sites with biogas. And, I think the challenge at the time was, there wasn't enough waste generated at these particular sites in order for the biogas to be, sustainable. I think the particular site which I recall was out at Lefanga, Lalutalie River Retreat, which is quite a small, operator which runs, river walks and tours.
Yeah.
So the biogas, it would take a while for it to, to build up and have enough gas, for them to use.
Yeah.
So I think, that was the major challenge at the time. It would require quite a lot of waste to be generated in order for it to be reliant and sustainable.
Yeah, ironically, for some of these sustainability initiatives, it's a matter of scale. You need to have a large production of waste in order for it to work. And I think Susanna mentioned in Tuvalu, where they use it, the way they get it to work is they have a lot of piggeries that are just near the runway in Funafuti. So they just use all that piggery waste. And that's how they're generating their biogas. Yeah, so really it's probably just an initiative for larger resorts, I would imagine. It's not something, and ironically, it's usually the smaller ecotourism focused resorts that are trying to look for these sorts of things, but they're not generating the volumes that they need for it to actually be feasible.
Thank you, Greg.
Thank you.
We have a comment here from here.
Sure.
Yeah, just to add, MNRE for our renewable energy division has recently launched a biogas project with Waisana Hotel in Savai'i. So there's already biogas project being implemented. I think the biogas is sourcing from the sewage.
Okay. Excellent.
Just to add on that, the renewable energy division has also implemented project looking at utilizing the invasive species. Not all the invasive species, but I think they're targeting only 5 invasive trees to actually produce energy. And it's located at
You catch that, Greg?
Yeah, I had heard about that one as well, that initiative. And I think that came across my desk sometime last year. And yeah, the Prisms team were looking at that. When I say the Prisms, I'm talking about the, I can never remember the full acronym, but basically it's the SPREP, one of the SPREP invasives projects. Yeah, they were reviewing that and the feasibility of that and how it would be done.
All right, Greg, we have a comment from Jobe. Okay. We're coming from Jobe. Okay, I think we're all second. Oh, okay. More questions.
Since we're still on ways to manage waste, it's not really a weight, but I would just want to point out an issue on waste management in one of the resorts. I'll just tell you straightforward. It's paradise. So the issue is offensive smell generated from their septic tanks. So I think it's better if I put it out there, then we can discuss, put it to the experts on what ways they would recommend to resolve the issue. As it is not so it's an issue that is chasing away tourists and not attracting tourists to.
And have you experienced this personally?
Yes. Well, it's not just a paradise, it's also the resort that Salitoma, yes, Salit. The smell is really bad.
The smell.
Yes.
If I may build on this good point raised. So is order an offense? Order being is from the facility? Is it an offense under the law? Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
So under the PUMA Act, under the section, we work under section 63, it is an offense if the amenity of an area is affected by smell, fumes, so which was also on today's presentation.
Thank you. So you will enforce that. I'm sorry, but that's right. So you must be experiencing that in the weekend. So, but it's good to raise it up. Yes, the powers of entry. You have the power to enter at that moment to raise the basic issue. Have that power.
Yes, as you've seen in today's presentation, we have under section 82, we have a power of entry to, enter the premises and discuss the issue with owners and them about the issue being raised by their neighbors or the residents.
I'll rest my case.
Can I just ask a question related to Jopez? So you do have the power. I'm just wondering, and you put it to the floor, has it been raised and has MNRE or anyone gone out there to assess the reasons for the smell? Or are you just putting it to the floor now?
We haven't received any complaints from resorts, but it's a personal experience
okay.
in the resorts.
Because I just, for those of you who don't know me, I am a qualified scientist and I'm a marine microbiologist. So just thinking my science hat on, and I know we're going to have specialists in MNRE too. There's a number of reasons why a septic tank can smell, and considering that we don't have a lot of tourists, that could actually be one of the reasons. So if a tank is smelling, it can actually be because it's not running at its optimum volume. So if it's not getting enough input, or if it's getting too much input in intermittent times, so basically no one's staying there for long periods, and then all of a sudden everyone goes there, it will struggle because the bacteria in the septic don't have enough time to build up in numbers to deal with regular volumes. If it's got a constant stream of going in, the bacteria, they're happy and they're feeding and they just keep consuming as it comes in. But if you have nothing in there, then they starve down and you've got low numbers, and then you dump a whole heap of food in there, so to speak, for the bacteria, and then they're overwhelmed. And so that's unable to be broken down and you end up with lots of gas buildup. So there are two possible reasons there. Others could be lack of maintenance on the system itself, so actual broken seals and things like that. So if there is a problem, it probably should be raised with them so they can figure out what the root cause is. It could be maintenance issues, or it could be that the tanks are either too full because no one's bothered to maintain them because they're not getting enough guests, or they're going through these periods of insufficient bacterial numbers because there's not enough food for the bacteria, and then there's an oversupply during intermittent use. Sorry, that was me being a scientist.
We have another question or comment here on the floor. Let's go ahead.
Just a question with regards to the race. I'm just wondering if you have checked if there was such development when you experienced
For Salitoma, so as I've said, we haven't received any complaints from the office. It's just a personal experience while living there, so I haven't been able to look into it.
Answer to Serena's question. There's an EIA prepared for Salitoma. I reviewed the EIA. For Return to Paradise, yes, there's also an EIA.
May I add on that with the issues raised? I'm sorry, this doesn't fall under MNRE, but I think it has to go back to the building codes, you know, and building codes is under MWTI. And also this has to go back to the EIA review, because if the EIA has been prepared, by the way, reviewed before they construct the buildings, so effective monitoring is also applied at this.
As Greg was mentioning, I think it might be a maintenance. It's more of a maintenance issue that can be minimized and mitigated by the operator once Puma raises that with them. But the review of the EIA, their wastewater and sewage systems is all good to standard with the NWTI code.
Can I just add on that piece? I think what my colleague was after is that, do you SDA have can you help us with the issues, the amenity issues and the monitoring on your side? Because yes, we carry out not only the building codes and the EIA, if we pass that stage, to have monitoring throughout the tourism operators when we hear these kind of issues.
Thank you. Yes, I think on that, as we mentioned before, that's why we have our accommodation standards committee. Obviously, SCA doesn't have the regulatory role or neither the experience or expertise, on these particular areas, which is why this particular committee, we have reps from FUMA, the building code, we have members from Ministry of Health, EPC, SWA. So that's why we rely on that expertise really, and their particular mandates and regulatory roles for their guidance on that. But if we're aware of any complaints that come through to us, obviously we'll be able to relay that to the specific ministries or agencies responsible for that. But from our side, we're not environmental experts on any of these areas, hence why we have that committee. So we can work together on that. As I mentioned, if we don't receive any complaints, then we're not aware of these particular issues. But in the event that they do, we do relay forward to the particular agencies. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. And just so you know, we're about to move on to Afera, yeah. But just to quickly wrap up, that Della did provide from Puma's point of view. They do. She's confirmed. She's like, yes, we do investigate these incidences when they're reported. They seek assistance from SROS and the Ministry of Health, as Robert said. So they need that as part of the referral process because they're the specialist agencies and departments. So, and she's provided an example of this, which is the Tamasina Resort wastewater treatment plant. So it does get, if it gets actually reported, it will be investigated. So yeah. it's a collaborative effort. People need to report it in order for it to be actually investigated. So
thank you. Any passage to jump in?
It's okay. Craig has covered it well. But what I would like to say is to thank a lovely lady for raising that as a good example of are we really collaborating in this? That's the question. A committee raised by Robert, that's the last resort. But as enforces, are we doing our part? I must thank you for raising that. It also can trigger some, they can on all our enforcement gaps. Like to me, if I'm in that situation, I'll first check I have the power of entry. When I refer to the power of entry, is there a proper ID card that I have to go into this facility? It's required under the law, so that when I show it to the owner, yes, this is an enforcement. Your safety test is very fix it right away. With reference to MNRA, STA, and I refer to the conditions of approval given to that particular. So the point raised by her, how can you collaborate? Thanks.